At what point did it really dawn on you? Oh wow, like I'm in all these spaces consistently, and it is really clear that people that look like me are not in the conversation or included in a significant way.
That's such a great question. I have cousins, especially if you're coming from a city like Seattle that has such a low representation of a Black population. And like, believe me, my family was very Black, originally from Detroit. So, they were very intentional about creating a community and an environment where we knew who it is that we were. But the thing was like, you did Jack and Jill, you were part of all the Black cultural things within the city, and then you went to an HBCU. So that HBCU tour was pretty drastic. Only reason why I deviated and didn't go to Spelman was because I really wanted to be in New York. Otherwise, that's where I would have been.
Okay.
But my cousins that went away, to school, they would come home, they would talk about their classes, they would talk about the things that they were creating. And I mean, they were, early engineers and managers at places like GM. They were coming from Clark Atlanta, from Spelman, and from Morehouse. And I just remember the sense of pride, in the sense of like, you know, creating and developing and building was just kind of a natural subset of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come home and they they got subscriptions for me to Black Enterprise magazine. There was a lot of like investment on their end. And I don't even think they realized it at such a young age, of them saying like, there's another alternative than just sort of going the traditional linear path towards getting a job and sort of just living this life that, is very much a tried and true, and more so like going after what other people have always had access to. And so, I think for me, knowing that, seeing that, being raised in it, and then going into an environment in Microsoft where I had mentors that were Black, who were lead engineers, at the time. So for me, it was never something that was abnormal.
Right.
Because I had always been trained by these individuals. And so it was such a stark contrast to kind of get into the working world and to see that lack of representation. And then within media, to not see ample representation of Black and brown genius, when I'm like, I grew up with these folks, literally was raised by Black innovators. And I won't even just say that the folks who had the technical skills and background, it's like I always talk about working at Auntie Monica's hair salon, like that's where I learned customer service.
Yeah.
That's where I learned, what it means to manage clientele and inventory, and market services and products. So, for me, it was just like, how is the rest of the world not seeing this? But then when you started to look at the literature, it was not indicative of other people's voices or communities being the heroes of their own stories or the innovators that have built dynamic things. I mean, we're just in the last couple of years finding out about Black inventors, even Jack Daniels and, Uncle Ernest.
Uncle Nearest, yeah.
Uncle Nearest, excuse me, yes. And so like all of these stories and these lines that like journalists either missed or intentionally weren't looking for, that was problematic for me, because especially working in tech, you constantly have to know what's going on. You have to know what's going on with your competitor. You have to know which companies are doing what, who's raced what. And so as I'm reading on a daily basis, all of the top publications, it was like, well, where's, all of these other folks that I've met at conferences that are building significant work as well?